The Critian Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Their massive warships moved through space like silent predators, painted in deep crimson that seemed to absorb the light of distant stars. Every species that encountered them knew what came next: surrender or extinction. Commander Rekvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the holographic display with 3 of his 4 eyes. Another day, another primitive species discovered at the edge of explored space. His tactical officer approached with the hesitation of someone delivering routine news. "Commander, we have detected vessels near Sector 7. They come from a planet called Earth. We have issued the standard ultimatum." Rekvar's mandibles clicked softly. "And their response?" "They say they need time to discuss terms, sir." That was unusual. In 300 years of military service, Rekvar had never heard that response. Species either surrendered immediately or fought briefly before surrendering. Discussion was pointless. The Critian Dominion did not negotiate. They conquered. "How quaint," Rekvar said. "They think they have choices. Prepare the fleet. We will show them what discussion means in our language." 50 dreadnoughts began their journey toward the human solar system. Each ship carried enough firepower to glass an entire planet. Their shields could withstand any conventional weapon the galaxy had ever produced. Their formations were perfected over millennia of warfare. They had never lost a battle. Rekvar settled into his command chair and reviewed the intelligence report on humanity. A young species, barely 200 years into space travel. Their technology was primitive. They still used chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. No energy shields detected. No plasma cannons. No quantum disruptors. "They fight with bullets and explosives," his tactical officer noted with amusement. "Then this will be over quickly," Rekvar replied. On Earth, Admiral Miho Kong stood in the underground war room, surrounded by arguing politicians and military officers. The holographic display showed the approaching Critian fleet in stark detail. 50 ships. Each one massive beyond anything humanity had ever built. "We should negotiate," someone said. "Buy time to evacuate the core worlds." "We should surrender," another voice added. "Resistance is suicide." Miho said nothing. He simply stared at the display, his face unreadable. He was 53 years old and had spent his entire adult life preparing for a war he never thought would come. Not like this. Not against aliens with technology centuries beyond their own. Captain Jaiwan Park approached him quietly. She was young, only 31, but her eyes held the sharp intelligence that had made her the head of naval intelligence. "Sir, I have the inventory you requested," she said, handing him a data pad. Miho scrolled through the list. Every space-worthy vessel humanity possessed. Military cruisers and destroyers. Cargo haulers and mining ships. Research vessels and even tourist shuttles that had been converted for deep space. Some were in orbit. Others were scattered across Mars, the asteroid belt, and the moons of Jupiter. "How many can reach Neptune in 48 hours?" he asked. Jaiwan checked her calculations. 212 ships, sir. But most of them aren't military vessels. They're not designed for combat. Neither were fishing boats at Dunkirk, Miho said quietly. Neither were civilian planes on September 11th. Humanity has always used whatever we had when survival demanded it. He turned to face the room. The arguing stopped. Everyone looked at him. "Send the order," Miho said. "Every ship. Every captain. Every crew that volunteers. Tell them we are not surrendering. Tell them we are not running. Tell them that 48 hours from now, we will show the Critian Dominion what it means to threaten Earth." The room erupted in chaos. Some cheered. Others protested. But Miho had already turned back to the display. Somewhere beyond Neptune, Ambassador Veltix of the Neutral Galactic Council positioned his observation ship at a safe distance. He had witnessed 247 first contacts between the Critians and new species. All of them ended the same way. But as he watched humanity's scattered fleet begin assembling near Neptune, something felt different. These humans were not running. They were gathering. The Critian fleet emerged from hyperspace near Neptune like crimson ghosts materializing from nothing. Commander Rekvar stood on his bridge, watching the ice giant's blue glow reflect off his warships. His scouts had already begun scanning the human fleet. "Report," he commanded. His tactical officer studied the data with visible confusion. "Sir, the humans have assembled 212 vessels. But their composition is unusual." Rekvar moved closer to the display. What he saw made his mandibles twitch in what might have been amusement or disbelief. The human fleet looked like a junkyard had gained consciousness and decided to fight. There were proper military vessels, yes. sleek destroyers with missile batteries, carriers that launched smaller craft. But mixed among them were cargo ships, mining vessels with industrial drills still attached, and what appeared to be a passenger shuttle with guns welded to its hull. They brought everything, the tactical officer said. Commercial freighters, scientific research ships, even what our database identifies as a retired museum piece from their early space age. Rekvar's amusement grew. Desperation. They know they cannot win, so they gather every scrap of metal that can fly. Pathetic. Sir, our analysis shows they have no energy shields. Their weapons are primarily kinetic, railguns, missiles, and something they call nuclear warheads. Primitive fusion devices. Kinetic weapons, Rekvar repeated slowly. The galaxy had abandoned such crude technology 3,000 years ago. Energy weapons were cleaner, more efficient, and could be fired indefinitely with a proper power source. Kinetic weapons required ammunition. They were finite. Limited. They will run out of bullets before they scratch our shields, Rekvar said confidently. Open a channel. Let us offer them one final chance to surrender with dignity. On the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Miho Kong watched the Krydian fleet form up into their standard battle formation. It was beautiful in a terrible way. 50 dreadnoughts arranged in a perfect geometric pattern, overlapping shields creating an impenetrable wall of energy. They are hailing us, sir, reported Lieutenant Taeyang Choi from communications. Ignore it, Miho said calmly. Captain Jaiwan Park stood beside him, reviewing tactical data on her tablet. Sir, our analysts have confirmed the Krydian shields can absorb enormous amounts of energy. Plasma weapons, lasers, particle beams, they have counters for everything. Everything they have encountered before, Miho corrected. What about kinetic force? Jaiwan pulled up the simulation. The shields will stop kinetic projectiles. But the more impacts they absorb, the more power they drain. If we overwhelm them with sheer volume, then we don't need to be more advanced, Miho finished. We just need to be more stubborn. He activated the fleet-wide channel. 212 ships hung in space, waiting. Miho could see them on his display. Military vessels painted in the blue and white of Earth Defense Force, cargo haulers with corporate logos still visible, mining ships covered in asteroid dust, even the tourist shuttle Celestial Dream with its observation windows still intact. Captains of the human fleet, Miho said, his voice steady. The enemy expects us to fight like they fight. In formation. With discipline. Following ancient rules of warfare they have perfected over 10,000 years. He paused, letting that sink in. We will not give them that satisfaction. Every ship will engage independently. Every captain has full authority to make their own decisions. There is no formation to break because we have no formation. There is no strategy to predict because every one of you will create your own strategy. On the mining ship Lucky Strike, Captain Juno Nam grinned. He had spent 20 years hauling ore from the asteroid belt. His ship had drills designed to cut through solid rock, engines built to push massive loads, and armor thick enough to survive micrometeorite impacts. Finally, he muttered to his crew. Someone understands how miners fight. On the carrier Defiant Hope, Commander Sora Kim launched her fighter wings. 300 small craft poured into space like angry insects from a disturbed nest. Each fighter was barely 10 meters long, armed with missiles and railguns. They were not advanced. They were not powerful. But there were 300 of them from her ship alone. And 12 other carriers were doing the same thing. Ambassador Veltix watched from his observation post with growing fascination. The human fleet was not organizing. They were scattering. Ships broke formation, if there had ever been a formation, and began moving in seemingly random directions. Chaos, he whispered. They are weaponizing chaos. The space between the two fleets was empty for exactly 7 seconds. Then humanity opened fire. Commander Rekvar expected a coordinated volley. A unified assault that his shields would absorb easily. Instead he got chaos. Railgun rounds came first. Thousands of them. Simple metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic force. They impacted the Krydian shields like rain on a window. Each one was absorbed. Each one drained a tiny fraction of shield power. Then came the missiles. Hundreds of them from dozens of different ships, each following a different trajectory. Rekvar's defensive systems tried to track them all and failed. The missiles hit shields, hulls, and empty space with equal randomness. Sir, shield power dropping to 92%, his tactical officer reported. Rekvar was not concerned. 92% was nothing. The shields would recharge. Return fire. Show them the difference between primitive weapons and true power. The Krydian dreadnoughts unleashed their plasma cannons. Brilliant blue energy lanced through space, striking a human destroyer called Brave Dawn. The ship's hull melted like wax under a blowtorch. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship went dark. But it did not stop. The Brave Dawn, crippled and dying, turned toward the nearest Krydian vessel and accelerated. Its crew had already evacuated in escape pods, but someone had stayed behind to aim the ship. "Sir, that vessel is on a collision course," the tactical officer said, alarm creeping into his voice. "Destroy it," Rekvar ordered. They fired again. The Brave Dawn broke apart under the plasma bombardment. But its momentum carried the largest piece forward. 10,000 tons of metal and composite armor slammed into a Krydian shield at 17,000 kilometers per hour. The shield held. But the impact drained 8% of its power in one instant. "What are they doing?" Rekvar demanded. He got his answer 30 seconds later when 3 more human ships broke formation and accelerated to ramming speed. These were mining vessels, heavy and slow but built to withstand the punishment of deep space operations. Captain Juno Nam sat in the command chair of Lucky Strike, watching his crew evacuate in the life pods. He was the only one left aboard. "This is going to hurt," he said to no one in particular, then engaged the autopilot he had programmed. Lucky Strike had carried ore for 20 years. Its cargo holds were empty now, but its industrial drill was still active. The massive rotating bit, designed to cut through asteroids, spun at full power as the ship accelerated toward a Krydian dreadnought. The Krydians fired. Plasma burned through Lucky Strike's hull, melting entire sections. But mining ships were built with redundant systems. The drill kept spinning. The engines kept pushing. Lucky Strike hit the Krydian shield drill first. The shield flared brilliant white, trying to disperse the kinetic energy. For 3 seconds it held. Then the rotating drill found a harmonic frequency in the shield's energy matrix. The shield collapsed. Lucky Strike's drill bit into the Krydian hull. Metal screamed. Atmosphere explosively decompressed. The mining ship disintegrated from the impact, but the damage was done. The first Krydian dreadnought went dark. "Impossible," Rekvar roared. But the humans were not finished. From the carrier Defiant Hope, Commander Sora Kim had launched all her fighters. 300 small craft now swarmed through space like hornets. The Krydian point defense systems tracked them, targeted them, destroyed them by the dozens. But there were too many. Fighters darted between dreadnoughts, firing missiles at close range. They were not trying to destroy the massive ships. They were targeting sensors, communication arrays, and weapon turrets. Death by 1,000 cuts. One fighter, piloted by Lieutenant Min Jae-song, flew directly into a dreadnought's engine port. The resulting explosion destroyed the fighter and crippled the dreadnought's propulsion. Minji's last transmission was laughter. Admiral Miho Kong watched from the Indomitable as the battle descended into beautiful chaos. Human ships fought without coordination but with absolute determination. A cargo hauler rammed a Krydian cruiser. A destroyer with half its hull missing continued firing missiles until its ammunition was gone, then rammed the nearest enemy. "They fight like every battle is their last battle," Captain Jaiwan Park said quietly. "Because it is," Miho replied. "That is what they do not understand. We are not fighting to win. We are fighting so that if we lose they lose too." Commander Rekvar watched his tactical display with growing horror. He had lost 6 dreadnoughts. 6 more were damaged. And the humans just kept coming. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not coordinate. They simply attacked with whatever they had left until there was nothing remaining. "Sir, I recommend we withdraw and request reinforcements," his tactical officer said. Rekvar stared at the display. The human fleet had lost over 80 ships. But the survivors showed no sign of stopping. A passenger shuttle was firing tourist flare guns at his flagship. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was terrifying. Commander Rekvar had fought in 400 battles across 3 centuries. He had seen brave warriors and desperate last stands. He had witnessed species fight to their final breath. But he had never seen anything like this. A human submarine called Silent Hunter approached his flagship using what intelligence called cold-running protocols. The vessel had turned off all non-essential systems, drifting through space like a piece of debris. By the time Krydian sensors detected it, the submarine was only 200 meters away. It launched 6 nuclear torpedoes at point-blank range. The warheads were primitive by galactic standards. Simple fusion devices that humanity had developed centuries ago for planetary warfare. But at close range, in the vacuum of space, they were devastatingly effective. The first 3 torpedoes struck the Krydian shield simultaneously. The nuclear explosions created massive kinetic shockwaves that the shield struggled to disperse. The fourth and fifth torpedoes hit the weakened shield and broke through. The sixth torpedo struck the hull directly. The flagship Eternal Dominance shuddered. Deck plates buckled. Energy conduits exploded. Rekvar was thrown from his command chair as the artificial gravity failed momentarily. "Damage report," he shouted. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Shield generators offline. Weapons at 60% capacity." Rekvar pulled himself back to his station and accessed the tactical display. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human fleet had been reduced to fewer than 90 vessels. But those 90 ships were still fighting with the same intensity as when the battle began. A destroyer with 70% of its hull missing was using its maneuvering thrusters to ram Krydian fighters. A cargo ship that had lost all weapons was scooping up debris and firing it from its loading bay like primitive catapult ammunition. "Connect me to the intelligence archive," Rekvar ordered. "I want to know everything about these humans." His tactical officer brought up humanity's historical database. Rekvar expected to find a warrior culture, a species bred for combat. Instead, he found something far more disturbing. Humans had spent 10,000 years fighting each other. The database showed endless wars. Conflicts over territory, resources, ideology, and religion. Humans had developed thousands of different ways to kill other humans. Trench warfare, aerial bombardment, submarine tactics, guerrilla resistance, nuclear deterrence, cyber warfare. Every combat doctrine the galaxy had ever conceived, humans had already tested against themselves. "They are not warriors," Rekvar whispered. "They are survivors. They learned to fight by fighting themselves for millennia." He watched a video file from human history. A massive war they called World War II. Humans had killed 60 million of their own species in 6 years. The tactics shown were brutal, creative, and absolutely ruthless. Kamikaze pilots who flew planes into enemy ships. Soldiers who held positions until ammunition ran out, then fought with knives and bare hands. Another file showed something called the Cold War. 2 human factions had aimed enough nuclear weapons at each other to destroy their entire planet multiple times over. They had lived under the threat of total extinction for 50 years. And they had survived it. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted. "The human flagship is hailing us." Rekvar accepted the communication. Admiral Miho Kong appeared on the screen. His uniform was torn. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was filled with smoke and sparks from damaged systems. But his eyes were calm. "Commander Rekvar," Miho said, "you have fought well. You have destroyed many of our ships. You have killed thousands of our people." Rekvar said nothing. "But you have not made us surrender," Miho continued. "And you will not. Because every human on every ship in this fleet knows our history. We know that we can endure more pain than you can imagine. We have already done it to ourselves." The transmission showed the remaining human vessels regrouping. They were damaged, limping, barely functional. But they were still moving forward. "You can destroy every ship here today," Miho said. "But Earth has more ships, more crews, more people willing to fight. And every battle you win will cost you more than you can afford to lose. Because we do not fight by your rules. We fight by human rules." "And what are human rules?" Rekvar asked quietly. Miho's expression did not change. "If we cannot win, we make sure you lose." Behind the human admiral, a crew member reported something. Miho nodded and looked back at Rekvar. "Commander, I have just been informed that Earth has launched every remaining vessel capable of reaching this position. 400 more ships will arrive in 6 hours. They are all volunteers. They all know they might die." Miho paused. "And they are all coming anyway." Rekvar looked at his tactical display. He had 27 functional dreadnoughts remaining. Against 400 more human vessels, even damaged ones, the mathematics were clear. He could not win this. "Retreat," Rekvar ordered quietly. "Full withdrawal." The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from 300 civilizations filled the massive hall, all demanding to understand what had happened at Neptune. Ambassador Veltix stood at the central podium, his 3 hearts beating rapidly. In 5,000 years, his species had observed and recorded every major event in the galaxy. But he had never delivered a report like this. "The Krydian Dominion engaged a species called humanity," he began. "The Dominion deployed 50 dreadnoughts. Standard doctrine. Expected outcome was conquest within 72 hours. The chamber was silent. Everyone knew what came next in these reports. Surrender. Assimilation. Another civilization added to the Dominion's count. Instead, Veltix continued, the Dominion lost 23 dreadnoughts and retreated after 16 hours of combat. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. Representatives stood from their seats. The Dominion had never retreated. Never. Not in 10,000 years. Silence, the council arbiter commanded. Ambassador Veltix, explain. Veltix activated the holographic display. Battle footage appeared, showing human ships ramming Krydian vessels, fighters swarming like insects, nuclear weapons detonating at close range. Humans do not fight like any species we have encountered, Veltix said. They do not follow standard military doctrine. They use primitive weapons in ways we never anticipated. They sacrifice individual ships to damage larger vessels. They fight with no apparent coordination, yet achieve tactical objectives through sheer chaos. He pulled up humanity's historical database. Images of human wars filled the display. Trenches filled with soldiers. Cities reduced to rubble. Mushroom clouds rising over destroyed landscapes. This species spent 10,000 years fighting itself, Veltix explained. Every war tactic, every strategic innovation, every desperate survival technique, they learned it by fighting other humans. When they encountered the Krydians, they simply applied 10 millennia of accumulated warfare knowledge. A representative from the Trell Collective stood. Surely their victory was luck. A fluke. The Dominion can send reinforcements. Veltix shook his head slowly. I have reviewed the tactical data extensively. Humans won because they do not think like us. We develop one doctrine and perfect it over centuries. Humans develop thousands of doctrines simultaneously and use whichever one fits the situation. They are adaptable in ways we cannot predict. He showed footage of the cargo ship firing debris, the submarine's silent approach, the mining ship's drilling attack. Each tactic was improvised. Each was effective. They are persistence predators, Veltix said quietly. On their planet, humans hunted prey not by being faster or stronger, but by never giving up. They chased animals until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They brought that same instinct to warfare. On Earth, Admiral Miho Kong stood in the same underground war room where the battle had been planned. The holographic display now showed diplomatic channels instead of tactical data. The Krydian Dominion had established a 50 light-year exclusion zone around human space. No Krydian vessels would enter. No contact would be made. It was not a peace treaty. It was a quarantine. They are afraid of us, Captain Jaiwan Park said softly. Miho nodded. They should be. Not because we are stronger but because we are unpredictable. They have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years using the same tactics. We showed them that experience means nothing against an opponent who refuses to follow the rules. His communication console activated. Messages from a dozen different civilizations. Some wanted defensive alliances. Others wanted to study human military history. A few wanted to hire human tactical advisors. The galaxy is changing, Jaiwan observed. No, Miho corrected. The galaxy is just meeting us for the first time. In the depths of Krydian space, Commander Rekvar sat alone in his quarters. He had been demoted but allowed to live. The Dominion needed his experience, his knowledge of the humans. He watched footage from the battle repeatedly. One scene in particular haunted him. A small human fighter, heavily damaged and clearly dying, had flown directly into a Krydian weapons array. The pilot's final transmission had been laughter. Laughter while dying. Rekvar finally understood. Humans did not fear death the way other species did. They had lived with the threat of extinction for so long that death had become just another tactical option. His console chimed. New intelligence from human space. Earth had begun construction of 50 new warships. But they were also sending trade delegations to neutral worlds. Offering medical technology. Sharing agricultural techniques. They were not preparing for conquest. They were preparing for coexistence. That somehow made them more terrifying. A message arrived from Krydian High Command. They wanted his assessment of humanity's threat level. Rekvar typed his response carefully. Humanity is not a threat if left alone. They do not seek conquest. They seek only to survive and be left in peace. But if threatened, they will match whatever force is brought against them. They will endure longer, fight harder, and sacrifice more than any species we have encountered. Recommendation: establish permanent exclusion protocols. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. And if engagement becomes necessary, commit overwhelming force immediately. Do not give them time to adapt. Because if you give humans time, they will find a way to win. He sent the message and turned off his console. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity was building, learning, and preparing. Not for war but for whatever came next. And the galaxy would never be the same.